I am so excited to announce that I have partnered with Magimix for season 9 of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast. Magimix is a family-owned business that has the amazing reputation as makers of quality kitchen appliances that are adored by chefs and home cooks alike. I remember growing up and always seeing my mum's beloved Magimix on her countertop and the utter ease of how she used it. With their 30-year motor guarantee, these machines have always been built to last. They continue to be relevant as ever in the busy kitchen and make fantastic food processors that make your food go further and reduce food wastage. They are a godsend when it comes to batch cooking and using up leftovers. I use my Magimix every day. If you're ready to step into the world of Magimix with a new food processor, blender, ice cream maker, or any other bit of kit, then simply pop over to their website and use my exclusive code at checkout for a 15% discount. The code is MMCSF9. Don't forget to download the Magimix app, which is full of recipes, tips, and tricks. Make it with Magimix. Hi, and welcome to the Crazy Sexy Food podcast. I'm Hannah Harley-Young. This show is all about the love of food and how it plays a part in our lives. I sit down with well-known personalities, food experts, chefs, and people who, well, just love their food, to find out all about their life, career, and their favourite tastes along the way. This week, I am really excited to welcome Calum Franklin onto the podcast. As the king of pies, according to Jamie Oliver, Calum is the man behind some of the most intricate and beautiful pies created in London since he opened the Pie Room in 2018 at the Holborn Dining Room at the Rosewood Hotel in central London. His lattice designs, delicious steaming fillings have given him a cult following, and I'm so excited to chat all things pastry, pies, and life with the man himself. He's also the man who gave me my first ever pork pie recently, and it's changed everything I know about life. Calum, welcome to Crazy Sexy Food.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we probably should just start with talking about this pork pie that I had recently. Mm-hmm. We had it at a festival. You've changed my life. I had weird thoughts.
For the better, for the worse?
No, I think for the better. Not so good for my waistline, probably. Right. But yeah. I feel like I had all these thoughts about pork pies because they reminded me of just family members from back in the day, and they just didn't look or smell particularly nice. But what's your secret to a good pork pie?
I mean, I had a very similar experience to you.
Okay.
Right, a long time ago. I had a hot pork pie in a pub. And I was like, this is life-changing. This is amazing. Actually, a hot one can just change my view on pork pies altogether. And then really after that, I mean, there's reasons for that. I mean, partly it's, all those fats and everything inside the pork pie becomes sort of, soft and unctuous and, I want one now. But a cold pork pie, once you've got the pastry right, it's good quality meat inside, it's cooked properly, actually it's like a thing of beauty.
Yeah. Well, I'm a convert, so there we go. So I always start my conversations with asking, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I cast my mind back to 5 hours ago. To be honest with you, I think it was healthy yogurt and an apple and a black coffee, because at the moment I'm trying to I spend my life developing pies during the daytime, so I have to try and eat healthily outside of that.
It has to be some nutrition somewhere.
Yeah.
And is that quite like a normal breakfast for you, that you sort of have yogurt,
really
fruit, whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I go to the gym now twice a day.
Twice a day?
Yeah, it's some graft in pie making at keeping yourself looking trim.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So with that, I kind of have to have a fairly healthy diet as well to balance it as well.
Good for you. I love that. So I want to sort of start at the beginning. You were born and raised in South London. I want to know what life was like growing up, who was cooking, what was on the table, what were the dishes that remind you of your childhood? Kind of just paint the whole picture.
I'm one of three brothers. And my mum was the main cook in the house. My dad kind of worked away a lot. So he was always, not always, he was away a lot with work, and mum had, she had to deal with 3 sort of fairly feral boys, all similar age. Bless her. God knows how she's even lasted this long. We were terrors, and somehow she managed to like put a hot meal on the table every night and was amazing. Someone asked me once, what did you look forward to eating as a child? And I said to them, it was a Happy Meal. That's the truth. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
That was my environment at the time. But my mum did try and cook kind of, I remember her shepherd's pie. I remember she used to do like a chicken with like peppers and like tin tomato. And we really looked forward to it. It was nice cooking. And some not so good stuff, but that was okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I also just feel like that era was a little bit up and down. I was thinking about what I used to eat as a kid, and like my mom was a phenomenal cook, and same as you, was putting hot food on the table every night. But there are a few things, and also I think there was like different fashions as well. I used to be given, and I think this is honestly a form of torture, gammon with a pineapple slice on it, which I think is the worst meal in the entire world. But it was very much like of its time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where in London were you growing up?
So, I mean, the part that I'm the sort of fondest of in terms of memories was Burnt Ash, which is like near Eltham.
Okay.
Yeah, and we lived on I remember that road really well. We lived on a road. The houses weren't massive, but we had our family, our next door neighbours had boys similar to our age. There's another house down the road, boys similar to our age. And we all just used to play on the street every night. And I just have very fond memories of that time.
Sort of, I guess, taking on from like what your mum was doing, cooking every night. Do you cook much at home?
Yeah.
Are you the primary cook in the house?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
So my wife and I are 100% like 50-50 on cooking. My wife's Sri Lankan, and she
nice food.
And she doesn't make much Sri Lankan food.
Really?
Yeah. So we try and eat really healthy in the evenings, and we try, and there's not a huge amount of vegetable based dishes in her knowledge of Sri Lankan food. So we just we're very free flowing with our cooking in the evenings, but just whatever sort of floats our boat that evening. But generally during the week, it's like largely vegetable based, fish, maybe a bit of red meat, a little bit.
What's your speciality?
That's a tough one.
If I was going to come over for dinner, what are you going to make?
Yeah. Okay. So I love cooking Spanish food.
Okay, nice. Love Spanish food.
Yeah. If I'm cooking for friends, that's for me is like a great one.
Okay.
Just beautiful sharing food, great ingredients, a bit of tinned fish.
It's like some sardines or yeah.
Yeah, I get these like really posh tins of fish from this place called Guyamar in Spain. And it was Will Beckett, who owns Hawksmoor, gave me a tin once. And it was like, I'm going to say it's a terrible reference, but it was like he passed me a drug, right?
Listen, sometimes food to me is a bit of a drug.
And he did it. And he's sort of like, I was around at his house and he said, look, I've got something for you. And I went to the back of his kitchen, passed me this tin of Guyamar. It was char-grilled sardines from Spain. And I mean, it's so expensive, just like eye-wateringly expensive, but delicious. And
I feel the same with like canned tuna. So like I would rather eat less of it and spend a bit more money on I think the brand is the Ortiz.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is no comparison to like, it's delicious. And it's in olive oil. And I like to like pour the olive oil like onto the salad if I'm making a tuna salad, and you make the dressing from the tuna oil.
Beautiful.
And is there any food that you dislike?
Maybe, to be honest with you, some offal.
Okay.
Right? I'll put my hand up and say, actually, I don't like all offal. And I know lots of people will turn their noses up at that, but sod you.
This is,
I don't mind.
This is an honest space, Callum.
Yeah.
This is an honest space.
But do you know what I mean? If you literally serve me just a massive bowl of boiled kidneys, I'm not going to be that happy, to be honest with you. I love a sautéed kidney on toast.
Okay.
But, there's limits to everything, I think. And for me, there's limits on certain offers.
You've got your boundaries in place. I think that's important. So I want to take it back. You sort of rose to prominence sort of in around 2014 when you took over the helm at Holborn Dining Room as their executive head chef. I guess what I would love to know is sort of what got you to that point.
I mean, I came into cooking in an era where what was seen as the be all and end all of cooking was modern European fine dining, right? Which is still, you can still find it out there today. But I remember being young and thinking, this is it. This is like the pinnacle. And, worked in Michelin-starred restaurants and got absolutely beasted by people for years and, put up with it because I wanted to work at this level. And I also had like a horrific alcohol addiction, right? So, that, from a very, I've always been an addict, but right up until, I hit 29 years old, I went into rehab, right, for physical alcohol addiction. And at that point, up until that point, I had just done fine dining. Right?
Okay.
And when I came out of rehab, and sober and still sober today, thank God.
Congratulations. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Is that 11 and a half years ago?
Amazing.
I was like, okay, I need to get back into work, but I need a sort of a softer landing pad to land on, right? Than going into a kitchen where a chef's just going to be like, wah, like screaming in my face. So a friend of mine said to me, look, I've got a kitchen at the moment. I'd love if you could come and give me a hand because I'm doing a cookbook. Could you manage the kitchen for me for like a year? And it was Marcus Verburn at Roast in Borough Market.
Yeah.
And I was like, perfect. Love to do it. Went and looked at the kitchen. It was big, busy, and I thought fun. Great use of like loads of suppliers and stuff. So I went there and it was just very different for me because I was used to doing this sort of very rigid fine dining. And then all of a sudden we were cooking British food in an environment where the plating itself was not that important. It was more about the provenance of the ingredients and just using great British agriculture, butchers and things like that. In Borough Market, where we had the keys to all of the stands, which was insane. So at the end of the night, I could go around the market when it was dead and I could just go in and take stuff and then write a little list and then just pin it on the wall. And we would do like an IOU.
Love that.
And then just for the menu the next day, right? Incredible. And what really that did for me, it just, I don't know, it completely changed my view on what is important with cooking. And from there, that, and actually the next step really was to go into, I went into Holborn Dining Room and took that over. But I realized I stopped wanting to fidget around with food and I just wanted to make tasty stuff.
It's interesting sort of you opening up about sort of the alcohol addiction. Thank you for talking about that. But how was it coming out of rehab into an environment and an industry that is, quite closely connected with that lifestyle?
Yeah.
That must have been,
it was
I was
tough.
going to say tough.
And, my group of friends were all industry based, right? So, I'll never forget the first time I went back to the pub with my friends, after coming out from rehab. It wasn't, the next day, it was probably 6 months later. And one of my friends sat there, I'm not lying, he sat there with a pint, right? And he was dipping his fingers in it and he was flicking it at me and he was going, any temptation yet? Cal, any temptation? And I was like, in my head, I was thinking, if I can like deal with this stuff, I'm solid. I'm good.
Wow.
And it didn't really matter to me because, to be fair, I was like, I'd made the decision I was never going to drink again anyway. I was good with it, which is, that's the important thing. And I remember once, I got a text from one of my friends saying, look, there's this guy's wedding coming up. Would you just be able to fall off the wagon for that weekend? And we will all chip in and pay for you to go to rehab afterwards. I was like, man, like, you guys are tough. And yeah, so you had to be kind of thick-skinned, go back into the industry after all of that. But
were you offended by these comments?
Not really, because it was just, that was them. They weren't really any different from how they were. And really, I mean, I kept it to, outside of my circle of friends, I kind of kept it to myself pretty much in those early years about drinking, because people can be judgmental and difficult. And actually, once somebody tried to use it against me, and I don't really want to go into that too much here. And when that happened, I decided, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to own this and never allow that situation to happen ever again. So I started being much more open about it, and then also saw the benefits of that, not just for me, but to other people in the industry.
Absolutely.
That I could talk about it freely. And I spend a lot of time now working with people that have gone through similar things or are going through similar things. And it's an important part of life for me now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for being so open.
Thank you.
So you get to Holborn Dining Room. Beautiful hotel. You got your clientele there. You got everything. I mean, did you feel like it was quite a jump from being at Roast?
I mean, it's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, at the heart of it, if you took all of the bells and whistles off, it was a big, busy kitchen, which I was used to. So that's fine. And I like the challenge of that. But yeah, I mean, just those opulent surroundings is something else. It's amazing.
Absolutely. It is a very beautiful place. I have been there many times. And then in sort of 2018, you decide to, well, you don't decide, but you go on to design and open the pie room. And so I think this is where it is for me, like, is the really big conversation with you. You are the London king of pies. First and foremost, how does it feel to be called that? I mean, I think that's a pretty damn good...
Yeah. And if you told 25-year-old Calum one day, your thing is that you're going to be known for is pies, I'd be probably 25-year-old maybe really disappointed as to what the future holds. But looking back now, wouldn't change a thing. And I love it. And, where I live, my wife and I live in Greenwich, and the London Marathon literally goes past at the bottom of our road, and every year sort of go down there and cheer people on. And not this year, but the year before, we were there with all of our neighbours cheering people on, and somebody ran past and went, "Pie man," as they ran past. And
No way.
Yeah, and it was a butcher from Holland. It was a really nice moment of recognition, but also a moment of shame, because it was like this national sporting event.
I love
Someone
it.
shouting "Pie Man" as they were running the London Marathon at me. But yeah, no, I love it.
Were you there supporting in 2019 by any chance?
I'm going to say no.
I ran the marathon that
Did
year.
you?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's what was missing. A pie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like handing them out like
Although
bottles of
I'm
water.
still desperate to find the young lad in Bermondsey who was giving out, what do you call those like long fruit ices, like a popsicle type thing, from back in the day? And they're like really long in like a clear plastic. And they're disgusting colours of blue and red.
I can't believe I've forgotten the name now.
But those things, like ice lolly type thing.
Who's
And there
giving
was a
those
guy somewhere in Bermondsey who stood outside his apartment, and he had a big bucket of them. And that got me through the first 10K.
What a legend.
What a legend. I still think about him to this day. So if you're watching or listening, come to me. We need to talk. I got to thank you. Okay, that's amazing. So pies.
Yeah.
Let's talk about pies. Because I feel like they've had a little bit of like a roller coaster of a reputation through the years. Why do we love pies so much? What does a pie mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's ingrained in our food culture, right? And it's family table food, which is why it's important to people throughout their lives. But it's also been a staple of our food history for, as long as food history goes back in this country, really. And like you said, it definitely does go sort of peaks and troughs in terms of the quality of it. Actually, I was in the gym this morning. Polly Russell from the British Library was on the TV in the gym talking about something else. And I love spending time with Polly and working with her on the history of pie making, because you can see this timeline, right, of it doing exactly that. It's a constant timeline. You know, back 600 years of written history, but there's times where it's, you know, the peak of food fashion, and then there's times where it's, you know, back to being sort of relatively stable peasant food, not, you know, something that the upper class would eat. Yeah, and I feel now that we are just sort of coming out of one of these troughs, which was caused by industrialization of food, right? And, you know, factory made food, high volume, you know, processed. And you look at it, and that's why British food has had a really bad reputation for the last sort of half a century, right? It's true, isn't it? It's that like brutal industrialization of food. But I do feel like we're at this sort of like just coming up on the wave of it now, because I see around the country, I do see more and more people taking time with pie making and trying to celebrate it and make it more beautiful. And I just want to like keep that going. So
at what point during sort of this time period did you decide to then focus on the pies? Because were you sort of at that point when you joined Holborn Dining Room?
No.
Or was it during?
No, I mean,
during when you were there?
With the opening menu, we had a pie on the menu, and that opened my eyes a little bit towards, okay, what our customer was interested in, right? Because for me, I'd got over that whole chefy thing of cooking for, you know, this is my food.
Yeah.
You eat what I give you. And actually was much more attuned to cooking for people, right? And things like that, I would see how many pies we sold and we'd change it up. And actually was very popular with our guests. So I knew that there was the market there for it. And then it was a couple of years later, basically that building that the hotel is within has been lots of different things over, you know, the last 100 years. And there's this basement that I used to call Aladdin's Cave. And in there, we'd go down there and sort of go finding stuff. And, you know, things like I'd find like a silver service trolley, like one of those incredible trolleys. And we'd send it off to a silversmith to go and get, you know, refurbished for us. And we'd use it in the restaurant. And then one day I found this pie tin. And it was like an oval pie tin. And, you know, now I know, but it's called a corset mold, as in like the shape of a corset, right? And it's made of 3 different parts with interlocking keys. And I'd never used one, right? I was a bit embarrassed about that. So I took it up to my number 2 in the kitchen, David, and said, who was, you know, David was 60 at the time. He'd opened some of the biggest restaurants in the UK and extremely experienced guy. And I was like, Dave, have you ever used one of these before? And he was like, no, I've never. And I was like, oh God, there's 2 of us that don't know. And I kind of opened it up to my senior team. No one had ever used one. And I thought, well, this is like a traditional British pie making technique. We should know. So that opened up a little sort of door in my head. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn it. And I'm going to teach it to my team because I've got 30 chefs here, right, in the kitchen. So if we don't learn this technique, that's a big group of us that's just like, you know, sails past. So that's what I started to do. And we started to focus more and more on that in the pie room, in the restaurant. And yeah, and it just became a really nice focal point for what we did.
There's pies, but then there's like the pies that you make and the pies that the pie room has become. I mean, these are like intricate, I think, works of art in a way, you know, and they really are. And I'm not just talking about the fact that they've got beautiful sort of decorations and the lattice design on top and whatever, but like, I feel like I used to watch a lot of the videos of them being made when you used to put them on like socials and things like that. And it is a form of art in a way, like what you guys are creating, which was sort of, I know I'm doing a play on words here, but like the humble pie has now become like this sort of beautiful sort of royal experience.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, honestly, I think I can link that whole mentality to pie making right back to when I stopped drinking, right? Because actually when I stopped drinking, I actually started to appreciate other things in life a lot more, right? Whether it was music, art, architecture, fashion. I really can appreciate craftsmanship in all of those. And I don't want to, sound too much of a dick, but
You can, it's fine.
yeah, it depends what it is. But, I do come across people in all of those fields, and I sort of, we're all attracted to each other in certain ways, I think, and enjoy each other's company because we're all weirdos for what we do. And, whether it's, somebody that works in, as a tailor, or, somebody who just only focuses on stonemasonry. I enjoy that. And with pie making, that was my outlet for it, really. And, it can be, like you said, those extremely elaborate, large tiered pies, or it could be a pork pie, just a simple pork pie, because actually it's mind-boggling how much work you can put into making the perfect pork pie. When you go right down into the nitty-gritty of it, in terms of, sourcing the most incredible wheat in this country, grown by people that are bringing back these ancient wheats that we've lost in the UK, and milling them freshly on site, so the flour is as fresh as possible. Like, going into that much detail, just a simple pork pie, which is essentially 3 ingredients, you can go quite. Yeah.
So what is your favourite pie?
It's a pork pie.
Is it really?
It is
That's what
pie.
it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I feel like my first introduction to pies is like a pie and mash shop.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on a pie and mash shop?
For me, they're an extremely important part of our food history in the city, in London. And I'm very protective of them.
Okay.
Right?
And I like that.
I thank God that they were given, largely given listed statuses as buildings. So, because they have a unique look, right? Pie and mash shops in the UK, in London specifically. And they haven't all survived.
I know.
Right? Which is sad. And there's reasons for that. Whether it's a desire to not change, to not make any sort of improvements, or to not change prices, to upset, customer base. There's a multitude of reasons, but those buildings are still there. And I'm telling you now, one day I'll bring them back as pie and mash shops.
I absolutely think you should.
I will.
I really think you should.
No, it's really important.
Because I sort of actually agree with, I sort of feel like it's like, I don't think it's like a dying, what do you want to call it, shop sort of cuisine, but I do feel like they're kind of, there's far and few between now.
Yeah, there is, and I saw there's one on Broadgate Market, which is, it's now like a Jimmy Fairley, sunglasses shop or something like that. But do you know what? Not for long, Jimmy Fairley. I'll get you.
Calum's coming in. I love it.
Because I do think that I'm extremely proud of our food as a nation.
Yeah.
Despite international sort of reputation and whatever. And I feel that, like, I want people to come to, especially my city, my home city. I want people to come to London and to be like, okay, what is the food of this city? Obviously going to have fish and chips, fine, in a pub. But pie and mash, I want people to go and have an experience where they're sort of blown away by that. And if that means making some small adjustments to what it is, I think that's natural. And it's that whole thing of tradition, of this is how it's done. It's always been like this. No, it hasn't. Stop saying that. Tradition always changes incrementally. It does. And that's history. And you have to sometimes, that's how things survive periods of time, is by making small changements.
Do you know what actually shocks me is that a pie and mash isn't like the national dish of this country. You know, I think it's still these days a chicken korma, isn't it? Or chicken tikka masala or something.
Tikka masala.
Yeah, I'm so shocked
Yeah.
that pies aren't more kind of celebrated in that way.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's more
love
of a
tikka masala.
Love a tikka masala.
do love a tikka
but you
masala.
know,
I know
that,
what you
do you know what I mean? Like as like what is the British dish?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe it's more of a London thing. I don't know.
No. Definitely not just a London thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of nationwide, but, you know, hold the front page because it could come round. I think
you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone heard it here first. It's going to happen.
I'm going to make you all fat.
So when I think of pies, we must also talk about pastry, which I know you touched on a minute ago about sort of like milling flour and whatnot. But people are scared of pastry. I'm scared of pastry.
Yeah.
I don't know what it does to me. It sends me into a flurry. I've had some bad experiences with pastry. Why do you think we've got this sort of weird anxiety around this thing?
Honestly, I think it's unfounded. You know, have you burnt toast before?
Yeah.
Are you scared of making toast?
No, but of course,
but it happens, right?
Yeah.
And, like, these things happen, right? But this is the way I look at pastry. Pastry is literally, you know, flour and water, sometimes a bit of fat in there as well. I mean, really, it's just in knowing a couple of small rules, right? And one is that you just have to learn to control the temperature of it. So the best way to do that is firstly to afford yourself time, right? So if you're going to make something which is going to take a little bit of time, you know, make sure that you're free that morning, that you haven't, you know, made other plans that might dig into that. Give yourself a couple of extra hours here and there. Quite often with pie making, what I do is I'll make the filling the day before so that on the day I've got all the time in the world.
That's
to
a good
make
idea.
Fancy swirls and like, make it beautiful and take my time because, you know, if it's especially hot day, you can pop it in and out of the fridge. One of the things I talk about in the Pie Room cookbook is, you know, those tricks that you need to understand. So whether it's putting your chopping board itself into the freezer or the fridge in the morning, so that when you're working with the pastry and you want to do some like fine detail, you know, on that chopping board, when you've got the pastry on it, it just transfers the cold to the pastry all the time, keeps the fat cold. And
that's such a good idea.
Yeah. And, you know, that was something that we learned in the Pie Room from doing the most intricate hand-cut lattices, like ridiculous, tiny lattices that we'd cut with a paring knife. And we would we'd literally do it in a fridge. So we would stand in a big fridge with coats on.
No way.
Yeah, because we needed to keep the pastry cold. And then one day I was like, what if we had these big chopping boards? What if we just froze these chopping boards overnight? And then that then stopped us from all standing in the fridge for hours.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone who was doing that. It took us about 6 months to work that one out. But yeah, and then you can transfer that technique to home as well. Right?
And the Pie Room at Holborn Dining Room, is that temperature controlled? Is it quite a cold room?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, you know, a large sort of air conditioning unit built in, which looked like a mirror. It looked like this beautiful old mirror, but actually it was this, you know, incredible unit that we could control, bring the temperature up and down so that we had the perfect temperature in the room. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of, when I designed that room, the whole point was it was the perfect environment for pie making, right? Every single aspect of it.
So what temperature was it usually kept at?
I think it was around 8 degrees, something like that. So it was quite cold.
Gosh. And you'd be in there every day, like all day?
Yeah, but you move your bums. Okay. So you stay warm as a person. Do you know what I mean? You keep warm. But it was, just a nice temperature for that pastry all the time.
What are your thoughts on pre-made pastry?
You know, if you look in that cookbook, in the Pie Room cookbook, you'll see every single recipe says, you know, it has a pastry dough recipe, and then it has the option to use a bought at home pastry, a shop bought pastry, because I'm a realist and I know in this modern world, not all of us have a huge amount of time for doing stuff. And actually, there are some really good shop bought pastries out there now. So if you are like my mum was, with 3 feral boys and you're trying to make dinner and you're like looking at this, tosser from South London saying you should spend 8 hours making pastry and whatever. Actually, in those circumstances, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favourite pastry? If you had to choose one.
I think to work with is the short crust recipe that I have in the Pyram cookbook.
Okay.
And that was one that for years, we sort of adapted that recipe backwards and forwards and changed little things. And I think it's incredible to work with and really forgiving. But if you do it properly, it's incredible flaky pastry, but keeps a sharpness to it for design. And it's something that since publishing it, I've had lots and lots of chefs say to me, thank you.
Wow.
Because they all work with it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy that one.
And I guess for anyone listening who, or even, sort of applies to me as well, who perhaps wants to start taking the time to putting a morning aside to actually make some pastry, what would you say is like the entry level pastry because I'm assuming there are some that are a little trickier than others.
Yeah, maybe hot water pastry is a little more complex to work with.
Okay.
It takes a touch more skill to work with. Honestly, a short crust recipe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just would never.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But puff pastry, that's more complex.
Yes.
Right?
That's why I buy it pre-made.
Yeah, and I understand that completely. And like I said, there's some really good ones out there. And actually, there's vegan ones out there which are good.
Wow.
Which are good. And this is, like drop a bomb here. Beef Wellington pastry is actually better with vegan pastry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay. So
what are you using instead of
butter,
it
has like an emulsified vegetable oil, I guess.
Okay.
Which is stabilized. So, the way a puff pastry works is that whole thing of, it's lamination. So it's layered dough, fat. So normally the butter has its water content. As that's roasting, the water content in the butter creates steam and it puffs up, and that's what makes puff pastry work. So I'm assuming that those vegan ones actually will be with, an emulsified oil or some sort. And with all butter pastry, puff pastry, it's going to upset loads of people, but this is the truth. It's too unstable and too fragile for a beef Wellington, in my opinion, because when you go to carve it, it just falls apart too much.
Okay.
That pastry is great for loads of things, just not good for beef Wellington. And actually a vegan-based one just holds its structure better. So when you carve it, it looks nicer. And I just feel like if you spend all of that time making a beef Wellington and make it beautiful, and then you go to carve it at the family table and it looks like a dog's dinner. Do you know what I mean?
I understand.
Heartbreaking.
I love this. I think I the vegans amongst us are all going to be like cheering, and everyone else.
The beef part of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot about that bit.
But there's a beetroot.
Oh, well, there we go. Then it's fine. I've actually tried that at the pie room. It's actually very nice. Okay. It's very good. Okay, so as the pie king, which is what I'm now just going to refer to you as, you have subsequently left the pie room.
Yes.
You've left Holborn Dining Rooms. What is the plan?
I want to bring pies back to London in a sort of a very controlled Calum way. I would love to open and win a Michelin star for pies and only pies. And that is a goal of mine. I never thought it would be. Never really sort of paid much attention to Michelin stars, but actually thought, it's time really that I can try and create a space that gets pies that recognition. So that's one goal, which I'm working on. And in the meantime, taking pies to Paris.
How much of that can you talk about?
Not too much.
We'll just put it out, that bit on a podcast. That's fine.
Yeah. But
that's an interesting one. Pies going to Paris.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to be received?
Well, it's a gamble, right? Doing British food over in Paris. But I like gambles. I like challenges. And I love the idea of opening a massive place in Paris and doing British food and, you know, going up against it and using incredible French produce over there and trying to do something for this reputation that we have.
Absolutely. Right? I love that.
Yeah. So watch this space. That's pretty soon.
Okay.
Actually.
That's really exciting. What shouldn't be in a pie?
I am a firm believer in, you know, everything should be on a plate for a reason, right? Flavor wise, that's one thing. I mean, when you said to me earlier, what don't you like to eat?
Yeah.
Right. Actually, if I think about it now, you know, I spend quite a lot of time in the States working, and a lot of the places you go there are the literal built for Instagram restaurants that are just, you know, like giant stack burgers, which are just inedible.
Yeah.
Give you a heart attack.
It's actually quite grotesque.
Yeah. Everything, like, you know, I love fried chicken and I love well-made fried chicken, but I don't want to have it with, you know, like cheese poured all over it and then honey on top and then gold leaf, and I don't care about that stuff. It
You just
kills
want
me.
the fried chicken.
Yeah. So there are certain things, obviously, that I think, you know, with pie making, like, respect the pie a little bit.
What 3 items are always in your fridge?
Good eggs.
You keep your eggs in the fridge?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't know why.
Because this is like an ongoing conversation between my husband and I about whether we should keep the eggs in the fridge. I don't think eggs should be kept in a fridge.
Weirdly, at work, don't.
Okay.
Keep them at room temperature for pastry reasons. And
Okay.
for, you know, making desserts and stuff like that. At home, I think it's more my wife would beat me up if I left them out of the fridge. But yeah, good, organic, rich eggs. Love it. Right. Always have black bean rayu, is it? Which is that fermented black bean paste. Right?
Oh, I love that stuff. Yep, I've got it. I've actually got mine. I've got mine out of the fridge. Yep. Okay.
Put it in, like,
yeah, it's like
so
in
much
oil.
stuff.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it just adds loads of layers of flavour to things and depth of flavour. Just always good butter.
Okay.
Yeah, a big fan of good butter. And I'll spend money on good butter as well. It's important to
Well, you
me.
can't not these days.
Yeah, right. But no, I'm just like, you know, if I'm going to eat, because I don't eat a huge amount of butter, if I'm going to eat it, I want to eat the good stuff. Yeah.
No, I get that. Aside from all the places that you've worked in, where are some of your favourite restaurants to eat at?
In town, Perilla.
Oh, it's one of my favourites.
Yeah,
Yes.
just a great restaurant.
Yes.
Right, neighbourhood restaurant. You know, Ben and the team there cook some really beautiful food, and for me, it's a really nice. Like, I can see. I mean, Ben was at Claridge's and he was at Noma, and it's like, if you just crossed over those restaurants, 100% you get Perilla, right? It's that, like, incredible technique that he's learned at Claridge's. And then at Noma, it's that produce side of things, right? And this sort of modern thinking. And that's what I love, is that, you know, with Ben's food, there's never been like a jus or a gravy or ever. It's just like light, beautiful sauces made of herbs and stuff like that. I had my 40th birthday there. It's an absolute dream restaurant. I love it. And then in Paris, Clamato.
Okay. Never been.
Clamato's great. Again, just very simple bistro. That sort of came about in that sort of bistronomy age of Paris, which was, you know, where everyone started just being cool.
Yeah.
Right. You know, waiters started wearing white t-shirts instead of wearing suits and stuff like that. But yeah, super simple food, just well made. Great atmosphere. I go there every time I'm in Paris. I love it. It's just too many to mention, isn't there? I like Mangal too. I think that what they've achieved there, they are changing perception of a national cuisine, right? Which which is quite an achievement, really, if you think about it. And they're doing it with real discipline and skill, and working with incredible produce. And I go there, and everything I eat when I go there is delicious. Respect to the brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually watching an interview on them with them, and they just come across so lovely and just
Yeah.
Okay, good answers. Right, I finished my conversations with a few quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, go on.
That was slightly hesitant. Okay, what is the craziest food you've ever eaten?
A massive cockroach. It was called a cock-a-poach. And it was at this Mexican chef's pop-up at Lyle's restaurant. And I genuinely thought I was being punked at the time. I was like, Did it come whole? It was whole, and they'd hollowed it out.
No.
And then they filled it with like a puree sort of thing. So
No.
it was just the most interesting thing to do. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, what has been your most memorable meal?
So it's slightly left field, this one. Was a restaurant in Alveiro in Portugal. It wasn't even a restaurant, it was a bar, and I was there with some friends for a friend's wedding, and it was in the middle of the countryside, and there was just, in this tiny bar, there was this whole suckling pig on the bar and some bread rolls, and that was it. And it was warm still, and we just sat there and we just drank Finos of beer, and basically you could just take as much of the pig as you wanted.
Heaven.
And we paid at the end.
Oh gosh.
And it was just perfect. Sometimes it's just circumstance, and incredible.
That's what I always think with the question. That's sort of what I want the answer to be, is when people answer it, is that it's about, it could be who you were with, what the setting was. It may not necessarily be the most flamboyant, beautiful.
No, I can remember the taste now.
I love that. I love that. Okay, most important question. My favorite snack of all time is sitting right here.
Yeah.
What is your favorite flavor of crisps and why?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think that's disgusting. No, I mean, I'm kidding.
I was about to tell you to piss off.
That is 100% the best crisp that has ever been created. And
elite.
I was, honestly, yesterday was on the platform at London Bridge, and there was a businessman eating a packet, and I came that close to asking him for one of them, just because I hadn't had one in ages. So I was like,
they are honestly.
Yeah.
So is that your answer?
That's my answer. Pickled onion monster munch.
What I love about them is that they are so strong, they kind of come out your pores, and it's sort of like, they're like a sort of.
It's making my cheeks tingle thinking about it now.
I might give these to you afterwards if you're lucky. Let's see. I know you've been to the gym like 25 times today, but we'll see. We'll see. What food sums up happiness for you?
Any food that I share with my mum.
Oh, that's nice.
I like, I was a shit son to her for a long time, in my 20s and stuff, and I was drinking. And now I'm sort of, rediscovering and enjoying time with my mum. So we were just away together recently, and every meal I enjoyed sitting with her. It was really nice. Doesn't matter what we're eating. Yeah.
That sort of makes you feel a bit emotional. I love my mum too. There's nothing like a mum. Okay. Final question. Live to eat or eat to live?
Live to eat.
Hey.
Yeah. Right? Especially travelling.
Yeah.
Make every meal count.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Callum, king of pies, I'm wishing you the best of luck with your future endeavours. I cannot wait to see you win your Michelin star for pies.
We'll see.
I will be there to celebrate with you. I think what you're doing, how you're changing the narrative of pies is really important, because I think the story, the history, the actual pies themselves need to live on. And I feel like you're the perfect gentleman to do that. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time. Thank you for listening. If you love what you hear, please subscribe and review. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram @CrazySexyFood and check out the Crazy Sexy Food YouTube channel. Until next time, bye.